Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche pregame show. Avs versus Kings again on the national stage. Very, very late at night. Hopefully this one not quite as late as yesterday. But the Avs currently sit in their last 10, 9-0-1. Hard to do much better than that. Well, what's the vibes tonight? Obviously, Kings are rested. Avs coming into a Segababa. Expectations are never going to be high in a game like this. But can the Avs keep their point streak going?
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay.
They can.
That's some confidence right there.
Who's in net tonight?
Kemps.
Yep. He is. He plays really well against the Kings.
Who's in net for the Kings? Because
That's a
there's a
great
huge
question.
difference between how Calvin Peterson does and Jonathan Quick does.
Yes.
Yeah. I assumed it was Quick. He's a lot more of a problem for the Avs than Peterson has been.
Certainly historically.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about
Yeah,
it.
him and Gibson. Their numbers are always
They always play
ridiculous
well
against
against
the
the Avs, it seems. Yeah.
Their win-losses took a hit last year. But, yeah, their individual numbers against the Avs are it's always a tough trip for the Avs playing those two.
It seems like when Kuemper was playing for Minnesota, he just always had the Kings number. Like he
Played
was
for LA for a little bit.
Well, for like 19 games
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
like
yeah,
2017, somewhere
1
around
second
there.
he did, yeah.
Yeah.
Then they force him off into Phoenix, into the desert.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting Kings team, though. They're kind of like the Ducks for me. They're taking advantage of a division that, it's really, Vegas, everyone is expecting to pull away. And obviously you still have Jack Eichel to come, but they haven't separated the way that the Avs have in the Central.
Yeah.
LA.
I didn't realize it. Just real quick on that point, I
Yeah.
was looking at it at like 4 o'clock this morning. I was looking at the standings, and I was like, do you remember that Nashville, Colorado game in Nashville? Obviously, like the too many men game, and that was for like the tie at the time.
Yeah.
And now when you woke up this morning, the standings were the Avs were 4 points ahead, and they still had their 4 games in hand.
Still have games in hand.
Where you're like,
Well, and then you look at
girl, bye.
you look at Vegas, who's sitting at 48 points to lead the Pacific.
Yeah.
LA is 3 points behind Vegas for the Pacific Division lead and 3 points ahead of Calgary, who's on the outside looking in right now.
Calgary does have some
Isn't
games, I
and the
think.
Ducks
They have
are
a
right.
ton of
Yeah.
games in
The
hand.
Ducks are right there with
no,
them,
and the
right?
Ducks are there, the Sharks are there. Obviously the Flames. I think the Oilers are right behind them. So
It's super muddled. In the
you're
Pacific,
starting
for
to
sure,
get a
yeah.
look at what the Central Division will
Jesus.
probably shake out to be. As AJ was saying, like, we've been sitting here this whole time saying, oh, well, the Avs are sitting at the top of the division by points percentage. It's been tight. They gave up the 3-point game to Nashville, so their gap actually increased. And then suddenly, just a couple days later, they have a 4-point lead on the next closest team in the Western Conference, and they still have games in hand on almost everybody. I think they're going to be looking to keep building that distance, but for LA, they're trying to stay in a race that they are, I think, much more in than they thought they'd be. I think they kind of figured this would be a year they could fight for a playoff spot. They tried to speed up the rebuild, going out and adding Victor Arvidsson. You got Cal Peterson and Jonathan Quick in net. And I don't think if you would have asked anybody in the LA Kings front office if they would have thought they would be sitting in second in the Pacific on January 20th, I think they all would have been over the moon with that.
Do want to talk about the Kings a little bit more,
For
but
the record, Jonathan Quick, 29 starts with a 26-2 record against Colorado in his career.
Holy shit.
Yeah, with a
Jesus.
918 save percentage and 2 shutouts.
he's
And a
not young anymore, though.
That's like Roberto
2.16
Luongo numbers.
goals against
Different team.
against the Avs.
Different
That's
team
just
this year.
dominant.
Different beast.
Do want to talk about the Kings a little bit more, but let's get the Avs side covered. First, obviously, you talked about Kuemper back in net. Very good against LA. The rest of the lineup expected to be the same.
No nuke.
No nuke as far as I've seen. You never know when they...
There was the chance he could test out today,
Right,
so I
right.
wasn't. With no morning skate, we're kind of...
Yeah.
We're always shooting in the dark these days, on the road trips especially, but Nuke should be back Monday at that point. That should be 7 days in protocol at that point. So
He should be back Saturday.
yeah, you're right. What am I saying?
If he could test out today.
Yeah,
you
right.
know.
He should be back Saturday, and almost no doubt he will be back by Monday. But other than that, Avs lineup pretty much the same. They're going to be kind of looking at the same. who have you guys liked on the second line? We've seen Loke do it a little bit. We've seen a couple other guys like Kuemper jump onto that second line. Occasionally, Knack has gone up there.
I wrote last night that one of the reasons that the Avs are having to win different style of games is because that crazy depth scoring that they were getting has kind of gone away.
Yeah.
Kuemper with 2 points in his last 10 games.
Yep.
Newhook, I think it was.
He had the one goal the other night.
I think Newhook has 3 points in his last 13.
Yeah.
And Jost continues on his exact, like his career average. He's like sitting on it right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm forgetting one of them. Logan O'Connor
has been had an assist the other night.
I think
but
it's
been
three
very quiet.
points in his last 13 or 14 games as
Yeah.
well. So you're talking like those guys have really started to run into that wall. And Colorado's defense, you look last night and look where the goal came from, right?
Yep. Gerard scores a goal and
that-
Tays assists on the Kadri empty netter.
Colorado's defense has really been their most consistent second line because they're getting elite world-class production out of Nazem Kadri. And Burakovsky's humming along at a high-end second-line production type of player. But their defense is buoying the production beyond that. Like,
Yep.
you're looking at how just where they're getting those numbers from. And their third line, fourth line is giving them absolutely nothing.
Fourth line especially.
They're getting
is
nothing
just
out of
pointless,
it.
basically. Yeah.
And they're getting enough out of their third line. Like, I really don't have a problem with the third line's production. Just overall, it's kind of an evolving group. But, like, they're third line guys, right?
You
like, you're not
expect
expecting
your third line to be hit and miss.
right.
Yeah.
You're not expecting you're expecting guys to go through 3 points in 13 games type stretches.
I was going to say, that's one thing to keep in mind
like
with
kind of what they do
with depth
why they
scoring is
are.
you expect your depth scoring to do this
Yeah,
all
definitely.
year long.
But what's been impressive is that when those dips happen, that's when teams lose games, and the Avs have been able to get through that. You know, they scored 2 goals last night. They're not scoring 4 goals a game right now. You know, it's not 4.5. It's not 5. They're finding different ways. You know, they're because of the shootouts, they're getting that 4th goal,
Yeah.
but they're not really scoring 4 goals a game, right? But they're getting it because their defense papers over between
lot of
McCarr, Taves, and Gerard.
Yeah.
It's papering over those depth problems, and they're getting just enough from Eric Johnson
Yep.
on offense because they're getting nothing from Jack Johnson. They're getting obviously nothing from Curtis McDermott. They got nothing from Ryan Murray. That they are just surviving like a fourth line and like a third pairing. That's doing nothing.
Non-existent,
like,
basically. Yeah.
We're not talking like every once in a while. I mean nothing. So
Yeah.
you know, like, but that top 3 that they have on defense is what really truly is separating them. Offensively, and I mean defensively, they're obviously very good still, but
Well, so
their production is just it's otherworldly.
I've been talking about that all season. That defense is the matchup X factor for the Avs. Every night, in every building, even when you're on the road, your ability to roll, especially when Byram has been in the lineup, your ability to roll those top 2 pairings and have maybe the most dangerous offensive player on the ice every single shift is it's just a big deal for them. But the fourth line, it's nice to see the Avs because a few weeks ago or a month ago, you know, we were talking a lot about, wow, we need to get more out of this top line. Nathan McKinnon needs to be, you know, putting more pucks in the net. And it's just nice right now because you're seeing kind of the value of the depth. And maybe it's not the same depth that you saw, you know, last year on those bottom lines, bottom pairings, but you're getting enough where right now, you know, the top line has kind of been humming along. Nathan McKinnon 6 goals in his last 8 games. His production's starting to pick up, and it kind of matches up with that depth trailing off. And you hope that when the depth comes back, it's when you need it to, because those top guys aren't necessarily firing the same way. And they've got a really nice mix right now that, to your point, AJ, you're not going through any slumps when one part of your lineup is off their game.
A really good hockey team.
Right.
And on any given night, you're just like, oh, okay, well, you've got to deal with an elite top line.
Right.
You've got to deal with Nazem Kadri, who has turned himself into a nightly problem.
Yeah.
That not a... you got to worry about that guy because he could burn you. Like, he's a problem. And, you know, a guy like Berkey, you know, then and moving on to their forward lineup. Like, on any given night, those... Abe Kubel has a 2-goal night. Alex Newhook, obviously, you watch him play, and you're like, this dude's always finding ways to be dangerous.
Well, him and Newhook and Burakovsky they create a really interesting problem for other teams because they can be having a horrible night, and then literally, like to use a cliche term, at the flick of a wrist, one's in the back of your net.
Honestly, that feels like 7 or 8 of the Avs forwards can be that guy.
Oh, for sure, But those two in particular, because obviously that entire top line is like that, but it's the top line. They have that. You're going to play them tight no matter what. Burakovsky can have a bad game, and you kind of, you can kind of lose track of him because he's turning the puck over, pucks are bouncing off his stick. Then suddenly
last night.
Then suddenly he's alone by himself in the circle, and he's got an elite world class shot. And Newhook is kind of cut from that same cloth, and you're seeing the flashes of it right now where he makes a couple mistakes, makes a couple turnovers, bad reads or whatever, but then he's cocked and loaded in the middle of the ice and can just hammer pucks by goaltenders.
Right, but then like even if you don't get something out of Colorado's depth, right? Then you have to work. Kyle McCarr is on the ice, 25 minutes a night. He's always got the puck. Devon Taves is out there. And if he doesn't have the puck, he's constantly taking it away from you. And kickstarting shit going the other way. Then you've got Sam Girard, who's a really good offensive defenseman. Like,
they got it all.
Dude, it's very multifaceted.
We do have a super chat here that I want to get to real quick. We don't have to go too in depth on the answers here, but Blais, is Claude Giroux even a good idea for the Avalanche?
They can't afford him.
Did I miss something today?
There was some rumors this morning spiraling about the Avs being interested in him.
From where, though?
I don't know. I don't think it was anything too reliable.
But hold on, here's the other thing.
He's an unrestricted free agent next year.
I don't doubt for 1 second the Avs are interested in Claude Giroux.
Well, calling on a guy like that is just doing your job, right?
Why wouldn't you be interested in Claude Giroux? I mean...
short-term rental, what are you giving up for it? Are you giving draft picks or are you giving up players?
Well, that's the problem, right? The Avs don't have a first or a second.
That's right. That's where I'm going with this is like you have to go with players, right?
My big thing is the only thing that I saw about Claude Giroux today. Now again, I'm a little disconnected from the hockey world right now as I deal with some shit. But all I saw was one of the Flyers writers said that Claude Giroux and Flyers management has not talked about the possibility of him waiving his NMC at the deadline. And somehow that turned into Claude Giroux to the Avs? Hey, we haven't had the conversation about you waiving the NMC to get moved somewhere.
Well, so
you haven't been on Twitter before?
Which is required.
I think it was either last week or the week before. Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts said that he thought that was going to be a discussion that would be had and that
totally.
They would.
I have full confidence that it happens eventually.
Him and Merrick did mention, on any of these big name players, expect to see, I don't know if Vegas is going to be able to be in on any of those big names.
There's no way.
But they were saying, keep an eye on Colorado and just some of these teams that they're going to be in on it. So I'm sure that stems from that conversation a little bit. And again, if Claude Giroux says, yes, I would like to be moved, I can 100% guarantee Joe Sakic will call because why wouldn't you?
He has a pulse.
Right.
He's running a team that wants to win a Stanley Cup.
And so I don't know. I mean, I until you start hearing what those talks look like, don't rule that out. Sure. But,
I mean, look, he's a great player. You put him on the left side next to Kadri and Burakovsky, and you have a really, really interesting group.
Right. And you move Nuke down, and it's
and
now every time Kadri gets tossed out, you have another center on the line.
This is why the conversation about a top six forward is so intriguing, because the first thing that you do is you take Val Nichushkin, you move him down a spot, and you put him next to Newhook, and then the idea of putting him next to, you want to put him next to Knack or LOC or JT Compher, and you're just like, wow, all three of those combinations are really intriguing for different reasons.
Right.
And then the trickle-down effect is, okay, well, there's two guys that can't be on that line. They're now on your fourth line. Right. You're not dicking around with Maltsev and Darren Helm and Curtis Hector.
Right? It's the direct of, you now have Claude Giroux feeding Nazem Kadri hockey pucks.
Well, and you have Claude Giroux. Do you want him shooting pucks on your first power play?
Also,
or do you want him as a trigger man on your second power play?
Right.
Like, obviously, of course you'd be interested. yeah, of course he should be interested in Colorado.
Right.
It probably isn't going to be a long-term home, but you never know.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, if there's a way for them to
So-
make it work, they're
We're
absolutely
not
going
going
to poke
delve
around.
too much into the deadline stuff
Yeah.
because the reality
It's
is
not worth it yet.
Well, and Colorado just doesn't really have
assets.
assets to do a lot here, unless you're totally cool with having no prospects.
Yeah.
Any rumor you see between now and the deadline, just assume that Joe Sakic is at least kicking
and
the tires on
the
it.
first things you should always do with those rumors is, why would the Avs do it? Why would the other team do it? What would it realistically cost? And if your answer for what would it realistically cost starts with Tyson Jost or JT Compher, you're probably not going to get anywhere.
I mean, I
Is
totally see
Megan
those
Engley being
be
on the
part
trade
of
block?
the deal,
Sure.
to some extent, but that's not the starter.
Does putting Megan on the trade block help or hurt the trade?
I mean, do we get somebody in return?
I don't
Otherwise,
Megan just
Yeah.
offering herself up for the trade block.
I mean, for the
now,
right
so.
price, like we're all for sale. It's capitalism.
True
right?
enough. True enough.
It's 100% true.
Like,
It's price for everything.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Come on
there is another hockey team that's going to be on the ice tonight.
So I tried to talk about them like 30 minutes
I
ago.
wanted to save it because we had them set up for our second,
it's time to
second
go,
segment
so.
here. The big news of the night is part of the reason it's been a little bit of a roller coaster year for the Kings. They lose Quentin Byfield in preseason. He's back tonight. He's going to play his first hockey game in the NHL.
Against the Avs.
bust.
Total bust. He's done.
There's no way this is his first NHL game.
He played preseason, but this will be.
And then he broke his foot or
I thought he
ankle
had
or
a game or
something.
two last
Did
year.
he play
no?
one? Maybe he
I
played
thought
one.
I thought he got a game or
two
two last year. I mean, I'm going to say this: he's going to score 2 goals tonight. But that dude was one of the least impressive that I saw at the rookie tournament
Joe
for
Colburn.
sure this year.
Jeez.
I believe he was there last year
He's
as well.
scoring a hat trick tonight. If
just
if
being
he's Joe Cole.
I'm just being a hardcore hater right now, but like Byfield has been really unimpressive, and part
Six
of
games.
So he played a handful at the end of last year.
part of the thing with Byfield is that he just hasn't put it all together, and there was a real question of whether he was ever going to.
Yeah.
It is draft year because he got drafted because the upside was he's Eric Lindros, right? He's huge. He's a great skater. He's so talented with the puck. He could do so many different things. When you watched him in the OHL, it was just like, this is very different.
He's just
and
better
then you
than
watched him
everybody
in
else,
like WJCs. You watched him against his peer group only,
It didn't work as well.
and it was like, oh, there's something up here. Like there's cause for concern.
He's for the Reign, when he came back off of his surgery, he scored 6 goals in 11 games.
Yeah.
So he's starting to figure it out, but it's right. Like he makes really bad reads.
So seriously,
He's a turnover machine.
Watching him at the rookie tournament this last preseason, AJ and I were there, and it was all the games. You bought one pass and you saw everything, or you had media credentials, you saw everything. And in those types of settings, you like to see your high-end prospects like that
Separate.
really stand out, because
Yeah.
those are predominantly guys who are at most destined for the AHL, but mostly going back to their junior teams. And you like to see those players stand out. And for the most part, on a lot of those teams, you could pick out the Alex Newhooks. And even, Shane Bowers, I thought, had moments in games where he stood out. And Quentin Byfield struggled in that tournament against a lot of players that aren't NHL caliber. And I remember us sitting there watching him, just going, a lot of career left, but man,
You know who looked a lot better was Alex Turcotte. Mm-hmm. He looked a lot better. Just having them both there and in the same game, you're like, man, one of these guys is eating the Avs up, and the other one is Quentin Byfield.
yeah.
It was kind of disappointing, honestly, because that was a huge mismatch in talent.
Yeah.
Like that. The Avs had a couple of guys. They had a line.
Kings had a
and-
whole AHL team
Yeah, the
out
Kings,
there.
the Kings was basically last year's Ontario
Yeah.
Reign.
Yeah.
Their goaltender had like multiple professional seasons under his belt.
Yeah,
and
it was.
Like, okay.
Yeah, it was definitely different.
But I mean, it's an interesting team because, like I said, they found themselves in a situation that maybe they didn't see themselves in. I think they saw them as fighting for a wild card spot near the end. you're in January and you're sitting second in your division, so they've got a little bit of energy. They've got a nice mix of youth with some veterans. They brought in some guys in the offseason to speed up that rebuild. So it's an interesting group for sure.
I tell you what, their underlying numbers as a team are really good. They're a top 5. They drive offense better than you would ever expect a team called the LA Kings would.
You're so used to that being a grindy defense first type.
And that's not where they are anymore. They understand that the game is played up tempo, and that's the skill that they have on hand is to play a certain kind. They are one of the top 5 teams in the NHL at even strength in generating shots, scoring chances, and high danger chances. Now the problem is they're a bottom 10 team giving all of it back. And that's where you have Jonathan Quick having kind of this, hey, remember me, I'm still really good, guys, kind of season after he's been pretty bad the last couple of years. Again, like John Gibson and the Ducks.
Right.
It's funny how those teams nosedive when the goalies don't play well.
Right,
and when the
right.
goalies are playing well, suddenly they're sitting back in playoff position, and it's like...
I mean, their
about
lineup
that?
represents that pretty well, right? They have Anze Kopitar, who seems to be ageless at this point.
He's still
Really,
awesome.
really
by the way.
good.
Solid guys like Arvidsson and Iafallo down the lineup a little bit, helping produce. And then-
Arvidsson had injury issues early in the year when they lost a lot of their games because remember
He's
they
an ass
had
killer too.
They had an absolutely glacial start to the season.
Yeah.
They've dug themselves out of that hole, and right now, for my money, they're a top 3 team in the Pacific.
But then you look at their defensive side of the puck, and it's Drew Doughty's playing offense well. Beyond that,
I mean, I like their defense because I like guys like Sean Walker and Mikey Anderson. Matt Roy is actually pretty good.
but you're
I
getting
like
by
but
with a bunch of
They
I like Matt
don't.
Roy.
meh guys, right?
They are not. They are not
Come
guys
here.
that move pucks very well.
There you go.
So they're
He's your
not.
Luke Shin.
Huh?
He's your Luke Shin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we could definitely have that conversation. Like,
Yeah.
I would be open to that. I prefer Walker first, but like the problem is that they're not drowning in puck skill back there.
Sure.
All right, you guys have good defenders, but if you defend all the time
Right.
and you don't ever move the puck out, like it's
You're still stuck back there.
exactly
Yeah.
it's tough. And then their depth just hasn't done a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of their younger guys haven't taken, the Jared Anderson Dolans
It
have
feels
not
like
taken that next step into being like, all right, well, I'm a shiny, interesting prospect. I've had some good games. I've had some bad games. Now I'm a consistent NHL player.
feels a lot like where the Ducks were a year or two ago.
It's a lot like where the Ducks are right now, where you've got a mix of guys that are just good enough to be competitive in a very flawed division. They're a flawed team with some really good pieces.
I mean, out here, they could, man. I would say very, 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 very unlikely,
Yeah.
but they could.
But honestly, it's kind of like where Anaheim's at, where you've got some kids mixed with some veteran high-end guys who have some cup experience, and you're getting great goaltending.
The difference, I think, for
Yeah.
the Ducks is they have Trevor Zegras. They have, not quite as young, but Sonny Milano. They're starting to get those emerging players. Troy Terry finally clicking for them.
and that's
Jimmy
where
Drysdale.
yeah.
Yeah.
what LA decided to do this last offseason, you're going to get to see, very right up next to each other
I like what
within
they
the
did.
division.
I liked Arvidsson because it was
I-
cheap, and the Phil Deneau thing was odd.
Yeah, I don't
Because,
have an issue with
like,
what they did. but-
Byfield and Turcotte are your top 2 prospects as centers,
And you went out
and then
and
you have
paid
Kopitar
Phil
that's
Deneau.
entrenched,
Yeah.
and you give Phil Deneau a big deal. It's kind of like,
yeah.
Why?
Funny, fuzzy math for sure.
Well, and I don't have an issue with it either, but it's just going to be one of those things that's going to be interesting to say. Anaheim, I think, went through a couple more years of pain
Yep.
and ended up with some of those higher picks. LA kind of said, we think we believe in Byfield, we believe in Turcotte, and we think that we can add on some good, smart hockey moves and kind of speed this up a bit and trust that little bit of youth we have, maybe it's not the same as Anaheim, but we think that we'll be able to offset with
got
Victor Arvidsson for Sonny Milano or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be interesting to see how that plays out. 2 teams that will be competing for playoff spots for the next couple of years.
it's also interesting because they rolled the dice with Calvin Peterson as their guy of the future with a big I've been a big Cal Peterson fan for years now, and even I was like,
Yeah. Well,
That's a big gamble, guys.
It was just odd because it's like, what are you gonna? Are you gonna trade Jonathan Quick now, or are you just gonna let him?
Just kind of let him. You just have a really expensive goaltender position till that contract ends, and I don't know how many years are left on it anymore.
All right.
It's really only. It's got to be 1 or 2. That's it.
2 rapid fire segments here. Penalty kill obviously was much better the other night.
Yeah, I didn't know what to talk about from the Avs perspective, and the Giroux stuff sort of dominated.
Yeah.
it,
I
but-
think they're 10 for their last 10. I was trying to really pay attention last night to what it is that their scheme is, and it's hard to follow
there is
right
a
now.
It's stand in a box.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
but
totally
it's-
just you guys do
No
something.
free entries.
It's stand in a box, but then you'll have one of the low guys fire out to the wall on competitive pucks, and where they're getting burned right now is the high guy on the other side isn't covering back, and that's why you're ending up with so many of those opportunities wide open out front. So I'm trying to pay attention to it. It's trending in the right direction. I like the personnel changes they've made.
I didn't have any issues with it last night.
You've got a better mixture of speed and skill out there. You know, Devon Taves is playing with Jack Johnson. You saw Cale Makar, Sam Girard out there with Eric Johnson. Newhook and Kadri playing out high. So they're trying to
That's
get a
my
little,
favorite part.
Yeah.
Fresh blood, man.
They're
giving
trying
it
to get a
different
little
look.
bit more speed and skill
Yeah.
in addition to your Jokes and
And
Comfers.
you look at
and
it last
LOCs.
night. 4 power plays for Anaheim, and shots on goal were 4-4.
Well, look,
Yeah.
I mean, look at how much better they were at preventing setups last night. Compared to the first 30 games of the season, where it felt like it was a free entry most times.
Well, and then they had the one power play where the Ducks won the face-off and had the entire 2 minutes in the zone, and they didn't do much
they
with it.
kept it to the perimeter.
Yeah, like it was like, oh, Ryan Getzlaf with a one-timer from 30 feet out, and it was like,
This PK matches up well with the way that the Kings play, like to be effective against them. They have a hard time entering the zone, and if they keep doing what they've been doing for the past few games, you hope that it just keeps being effective because they just can't get the puck back if they have to dump and chase after it. So.
Jonathan Quick, 5.8 for 1 year after this one.
I knew we were getting close to the end of it.
All right, if you want to make a lot less than Jonathan Quick's contract, but maybe some money, Betmaster Blais.
Yeah,
on the bets.
Took an L last night, but
Yeah.
it's time to rebound. You know what's crazy about this game, which I was just looking at the stats and stuff. The Kings have 6 shorthanded goals this year, right? So like
Goals
if there
against
was,
or-
goals against. So if there was a chance for LOC to make a goal on a shorthanded that you could actually make that bet,
Tonight would have been the night.
tonight would be the night to make that bet. But because that's not something we can bet right now on a player, they used to have one you guys were talking about.
Yeah, I
but
think there used to be a will there be a shorthanded goal,
Yeah.
yes or no, but
maybe DraftKings will get that back if we keep talking about it. Let's pull these up here, going through the 3. Again, kind of going back to something that's a little bit more safe. Makar with half assist, minus 120. Feel
Pretty close to free money
He
there.
still
Yeah.
feels like free money, yeah.
Last night was hard, right? So, and then Mac with 4.5 shots. He had, I believe, was it 0 shots on net last night?
I'd
Oh, I
have
don't
to
know.
check, yeah.
Check that. I'm pretty sure it was
Kadri
pretty.
led the team with 5, I remember.
And then
but-
Taves sneaking in a secondary assist on the empty netter last night.
there you go.
I'm going to give him another run at it.
I mean, you need those when you're in like a scoring race, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
That's how you stay in them.
Does this not sum up what we were talking about in the first segment of the show? Expecting Mac to drive the offense, and then you need the defense to pitch in, right? That's how the Avs get the job done.
Yep.
So,
Are the D-Men the X-Men or the X-Force?
they're the 4 Norsemen.
The 4 Norsemen.
Yeah, they're the X-Men.
Yeah.
X-Force is kind of lame, man. I never liked X-Force.
You
very
never
much.
liked X-Force?
All right. We are officially, well, it's on national TV, so puck drop might be in 5 minutes or might be in 15.
They showed teams walk into the ice,
So
I think
hopefully
we're
it should
getting
be
there.
coming up here. So we're going to get out of here. Thank you, everyone. 200 of you again for the pregame show. We appreciate all of you. We hope you join us for the postgame after the game, however it goes. You know you can find us right here on YouTube. Until then, we'll talk to you after the game.